Hello, I'm Bill Woods. Welcome to the beautiful waterfront here at Geelong for the first of 3 rounds in the Kia Formula One Triathlon Series. We have an unexpected guest commentator for this first round. It's disappointing in one sense, of course, that Simon Whitfield and Kelly Guest. Kelly is in for a huge surprise. This is a demanding series for a newcomer. Simon, unfortunately, triathlon and a very good swimmer, so watch for him early on. In fact, he is starting extremely well. And if Matt Reid gets a body length in front, that's about 2 metres, Mark Track. He's very, very big, but this is an absolute threshing machine. If the women's race was rough, this is going to be unbelievably so.
Absolutely. It's actually quite a short distance to the first turning buoy, and that makes it paramount to get a good start. And you can see the guys all over the top of each other there. Normally we have a little longer, so this is a tough swim. That's Greg Bennett there going right across to the right-hand side of the field. I'm not sure if that's a good move, given that it's such a short distance to the first buoy. Certainly, if it's a few hundred metres, that's a good idea to get with the good swimmers, but he's put himself back in almost last position right now. Kelly Guest is struggling in the red there, the Canadian. Swim is his weakest leg. Watch for him on the bike. Indeed, but in this type of format, if you're back out of the swim, you're in all sorts of trouble. Here we go. That's Miles Stewart. What a great start from him. Apparently he's been swimming like an absolute dog in training, but look at him when it comes to race day. Always there, smart racing. That's one of the Reid boys. Shane Reid, it looks like to me, out in front. He's got a long, smooth style. Both the Reid brothers, exceptional swimmers, both coming from swimming backgrounds, representing New Zealand, live most of their time on the Gold Coast, actually. Interestingly, Mark, they started on the far left of the line as we watched them swim away from us, so they were arguably further from the buoy. We saw Greg make that direct turn to the right, trying to get the shortest run to the buoy, but it seems that he's been race. Mark Fuel's down there.
Now moving up through the field, it is Shane Reid of New Zealand, leading out Miles Stewart, who got a very good start. Behind him, Chris Gemmell, New Zealand, Hideo Fukui, and then we start to see some green and gold singlets. Courtney Atkinson is well placed at the moment. Brycey Quirk pretty well placed. Paul Amy, Matt Reid, and Craig Watson all together. But look at Shane Reid. He would definitely be first. First up and running, Shane Reid. Miles Stewart, a great swim by him. Hideo Fukui, debut by the Japanese competitor, up in 3rd place. Chris Gemmell behind him, Courtney Atkinson. Matt Reid using those long legs of Greg Bennett, a good comeback. Chris McCormack, Brad Bevan. And as we've seen often, Shane Reid out of the water first. Great dolphining skills. He's got a good lead. Miles Stewart, what a great swim from Miles. Says he's not in form. I think he's foxing. Reid's got about 10 metres over Stewart. Right behind them, you've got Courtney Atkinson, one of the favourites today. Then Matt Reid, Shane's brother, Chris Gemmell, the Kiwis, very prominent, Bill. Chris McCormack, the alien Levi Maxwell. What a great swim from Hideo Fukui from Japan. Bryce Quirk, the Croc, Spider Lees, Greg Bennett, Simon Thompson, Chris Amy, Chris Hill, a long way back for Chris, and Trent Chapman tailing the field, but 10 seconds from first to last. Well, what price a big bunch on the bike. We've seen it before, but Snuffy Reid is hoping to snuff out that possibility as he rips away. But I don't think it'll last too long. It is very, very hard for any of the men to catch a break on their rivals. Shane slows down. He's just settling his feet into the bike shoes now, tightening them up, getting comfortable, and, of course, sneaking a look at his competition, who are doing the same thing. We'll be back with more. There is a pack developing behind him, and it's a formidable one. It's about to catch him. Indeed, and the strong man, Chris McCormack's the one who's done the work, brought Miles Stewart, Courtney Atkinson, the alien, and Matt Reid up, but distinct bunches, 3 or 4 bunches. Then you've got Paul Amy, Bryce Quirk, Simon Thompson, the Croc, and Mark Spider Lees chasing them, so 4 distinct bunches. Well, one of the athletes, apart from Simon Whitfield, who couldn't make it to the first round because of injury, was American Mike Smedley. But he's come down, and he's out on the bike course with Mark Fuel. Well, Mike, welcome to the series.
Pretty technical. Right here, we've got 2 really sharp corners. One of them's off-cambered on the downhill, so guys are going to have to really slow down in anticipation of that. And you're coming into it really quick, so hopefully we won't see any accidents today.
Now, already we've seen this field start to split up. A real surprise.
Oh, absolutely. We got Hilly in the 3rd group, which is a shocker. That guy can draft a wheel like you wouldn't believe. So, yeah, it must be the wind, the combination of the wind and the technicality of the course that must be doing it.
And Miles' swim, though, a real surprise. You've been training with him.
Yeah, I've been training with Cole Stewart, and to see Miles come second out of the swim is incredible. The guy hasn't been doing anything at all, so it's a shocking swim.
Expert comments from Mike Smedley and Milo. looking very, very good for a man who claims to be underdone, Mark Dragon, although he's not the only bloke who's foxing, I think, in the start of this series.
Well, Brad Bevan, when I spoke to him, said that he was in bad shape and didn't expect anything, but you can bet the croc will be there somewhere. But Miles looks great on the front. The man who was doing all the work, just going to the front now, Chris McCormick. Apparently, Chris has been training like a powerhouse on the bike and absolutely tearing the triathletes up. His swim, obviously strong because he was out right behind the leaders. His run, not enjoying it as much as he used to. And interestingly, Chris McCormack comes from a running background, and now it's probably his weakest of three. Mind you, he is strong on all three legs, but probably the weakest of his three legs.
After missing Olympic selection, Macca went to the United States and won 12 out of 12 events, including the famed Alcatraz triathlon, which is a very, very big one. So congratulations to him for overcoming what was obviously a massive mental letdown. So many great triathletes in Australia, but so few allowed to compete at the Olympic Games. And as a selected drags, you know all about it. It was torturous. Courtney Atkinson now taking a turn. Levi Maxwell is up there with him. Two of the young guns, you might say. And Courtney hoping to go a little better than last year when he finished second in the series to Miles.
Has improved every year, world junior champion. He has made the transition to the senior ranks without any problems at all. He's right up there. In fact, won an ITU World Cup event last year, so he is a man to be watched and to be feared. Look at the Reid brothers, great swimmers, up with the leaders. Shane Reid, second from the back, and Matt Reid, the tallest man in the field, hanging on to that lead bunch. Here's the chase pack. You've got Bryce Quirk there, Mark Lees, Brad Bevan's up there. Paul Amy's there, so it's a strong group as well.
Amy, a noted runner, although has improved on all three legs as the seasons have worn on. You have to point out, when we get another opportunity, have a look at the post on Matt Reid's seat. It would have to be the longest in the history of cycling. And for the average punter, you'd get vertigo sitting on Matt Reid's bike. McCormack takes another turn in the lead as the alien Maxwell tucks in. And sitting right behind him typically is Miles Stewart. Shane Reid, as he deserves after doing the hard yards in the swim, has sat back in about fourth spot, taking a little rest. Matt looks to be struggling to keep up with this group at the moment, Mark. And the other interesting point to make is that unlike other triathlons we've seen, even though it's an enduro, but in this series, a much smaller lead pack than in recent years.
Indeed, difficult swim. I think that the boys were fairly close together and just makes for tough swimming. Chris McCormick waving Miles Stewart through, and look how comfortable Miles sits on a bike. The upper body hardly moving, the legs acting like pistons, nice and relaxed. What a great cyclist he is in the world of triathlon. Behind him, tucked in, McCormick doing most of the work. Then you've got Courtney Atkinson, well positioned. Levi Maxwell's in that bunch, and the Reid brothers, Matt Reid, as you mentioned, really struggling. That's surprising. I think the fact that he's so tall makes it hard for him to corner like the other guys, Bill.
Yeah, it would have to be the case. Matt and Shane, incidentally, have won the last 3 World Aquathon titles between them. Matt took over the mantle in 2000. Shane, of course, winning the previous 2. Another interesting thing about Shane, with Miles Stewart there taking a turn in the lead, he took up triathlon after being sacked as a barman. And the reason he was sacked, he was giving Miles Stewart free drinks on the Gold Coast. And you might say that that was a prophetic decision by the employer of Shane Reid, because he is now up there dicing with Miles among the best in the world.
Indeed, Matt Reid's actually got back on, and the chase bunch are actually closing the gap down, led by Brad Bevan. Really not very far behind at all now, only a few seconds. Stewart on the front, McCormick's there, Shane Reid's there, Courtney Atkinson well positioned, and Matt Reid still being strung out at the back. He seems to have trouble on the downhill. Look at Stewart powering away. You'll see him and McCormick doing most of the work for sure. The other guys will be prepared to try and stay with them.
An early break here from Milo, just sorting out the experience from the inexperience, but also giving himself a clean run into transition. McCormack won't let that happen. As Milo gets the feet out of the shoes, McCormack steals a march on him, so he's going to be the first guy into transition and give himself a little bit of extra time to get through to the first of our 2 run legs today. Reminding you, it's swim, bike, run twice. Now the pack comes in. And Stewart is having a very, very smooth time. Little bit of a delay there, and of course held up by the traffic. And that's exactly the point we make when we say that these lead athletes try to give themselves a clean transition. If you have traffic around you, anything's possible. We saw in the women's race, Emma Carney have a couple of problems in transition. You just don't want to be in that bunch. McCormack first out in the run. Atkinson chasing hard, and Stewart with that little gap between he and the leaders, Maxwell and Matt Reid, are the next 2.
The chase bunch came in just behind them, only a couple of seconds behind. McCormick had a very good transition. Miles Stewart not so good. Courtney always fast in transition, actually going up to Chris's shoulder now. May well decide to try and steal a march here. He needs to have a lead on the other guys. He doesn't want them to sit on his feet. He's the strongest swimmer there.
Atkinson and McCormick might be mindful here, Drags, of the great Greg Welch, retired now, of course, due to ill health, but he used to like to have a really good first run in the Enduros. He used to burn off a lot of his competitors that way, give himself goals between McCormick and Stewart are something to look forward to almost as much as they're racing. And right now, they're just behind Courtney Atkinson. It's been a good battle, Drags, and I wonder if anyone behind them has the ability to catch up now. This is an interesting one.
You've got 3 world champions on screen right there. World junior champion Courtney Atkinson, former world champion 1997 Chris McCormick, and the 91 world champion Miles Stewart. So that is a strong pedigree there. They're all running together. They bunch back up. Courtney not able to break, and Miles actually closed the gap. That signals danger for the other guys.
If you are surprised at the 1991 World Championship win for Miles Stewart, not having been too familiar with the ranks of triathlon, he is still only 29 years of age. It's been a tremendous career, and it's a long way from over. Still the Reed brothers together from Bevan, Maxwell, then Paul Amy and Bryce Quirk, who's just lost a position there after recently winning that great race in Wollongong, the national sprint titles, where he beat a very, very good field. Quirk was expected to be among the front runners here, and this man too was early favourite. Chris Hill having a very, very tough swim, and that's kind of put him on the back foot for the rest of the race.
It certainly has. We would have expected Hill to be out at least in the top 5 positions, but he must have got hammered. He's not a big guy, and it was a rough start to that swim. He went backwards. So we've got out in front Atkinson, McCormick, Stewart, as always, sitting on, perfectly positioned, waiting for that second swim, and just he'll try and stay with Courtney Atkinson because he's the strongest swimmer there. Macca just tapping Courtney on the shoulder saying, come on, mate, let's go. You've got Bevan overtaking Matt Reed now with his sights set on Shane Reed. He will get up in that swim. Bevan is a master of the second swim.
Now, it's interesting that behind these 3, Bevan is the only one that's really moving forward. The Reed brothers seem to be struggling a bit to hold position, although the swim will tell us that, because they are very, very good swimmers. If they don't move forward in the swim, then we know they're having a few problems keeping pace with these 3. And of these 3, arguably, McCormack would be the inferior swimmer, but that's really not by much. As Mark pointed out earlier, he's very strong in all 3 legs. You can't win a world championship without being so. Brad Bevan, you can see running very, very hard there in the background. He's obviously feeling it very important tactically to keep pace with these 3 going into the next section of this race. So Shane Reed will be very much in his sights before this run is over, and Quirk now has regained his position from Paul Amy, so that's a good battle.
Bryce Quirk doing a great job and showing why he won the Australian sprint title only a few weeks back, doing a really, really excellent job at this stage. You've got Courtney Atkinson looking very comfortable in front. Chris McCormick not quite as comfortable, and Miles Stewart blowing quite heavily, but all perfectly positioned as he usually is.
Well, there's Canadian Kelly Guest on the New Balance run leg. There is another 3 legs of this race to go, and Kelly is looking like he may be lapped, so disappointment for him. Hideo Fukui of Japan, after having an excellent swim, has really struggled on the bike and the run, so Hideo is in for a tough initiation in this series as well. Still Bevan from Shane Reed. Big Matt Reed there, about to be gobbled up, I think, by Quirk, Maxwell and Paul Amy, and then Chris Hill, who's in the unfortunate position of being a long way from anybody.
Yeah, in that no man's land, but he is running really hard. He's trying to get up with that second bunch where the Reed brothers and Brad Bevan are, so that he can get with them in the swim. We know Chris Hill, if he's got clear water, is one of the best swimmers in this field. Here's the leaders again, though. Courtney Atkinson, Chris McCormick and Miles Stewart. Miles does not look comfortable, but he always seems to be there and be in the right spot, and he is right now. 3rd spot. Look at him going. Actually, I think Brad Bevan is the man who is closing the gap. Interesting, Bevan known also for his tactical awareness in this format. He is working very, very, very hard, because he knows if these 3 get away in the swim, that could be the end of the section.
Through the Powerade thirst station, McCormack uses it. Miles Stewart has made the comment that he still thinks his run is the untapped well in his kit bag. He thinks there's great improvement there, which is interesting given that Milo is world famous for his sprint finishes. These 3 are still together, locked as they head towards the transition. for the third time in this event. We're about to go on another swim, bike, run expedition.
Atkinson leading him in. McCormick right behind him. Miles Stewart in third. Bevan leading the chase. Here we go. They'll be in tandem. Off with the shoes. Grab the goggles and into the water. Look at that, three together. And look who's out first. Stewart out first. McCormick holding his second spot. Atkinson uncharacteristically dropping back a few paces to third. In's Bevan now. All just a problem with the goggles. Got him now. In with Shane Reed. Those two will swim very strongly together. Out goes Bryce Quirk. Here's the leaders. Miles Stewart. Quite a run to the water, Bill. Then they'll dive in, porpoise, and away we go. 300 metres in the water.
Well, how much petrol has Brad Bevan left in the tank as we see the top three enter the water and porpoising well after a good bit of waiting there as Miles Stewart. Bevan just ahead of Shane Reed. That'll be an interesting battle for fourth at the moment. But Bevan admitting, or at least saying, that he's a little underdone. I don't know whether it's an admission, because I'm not sure if Brad really knows just how fit he is at the moment after all that injury and very little race action. There's Matt Reed. He can just about walk around the swim course.
The long legs certainly are an advantage with this type of porpoising. There you go, Paul Amy in behind him, and there is Chris Hill, interestingly, without his goggles, Bill. Got to be a little more difficult.
Yes, well, this is a crucial swim for him, and after the break, we'll find out just how he goes. Stay with us. Kia F1 of Triathlon. Bevan right in the thick of things here. Can he go on with it, though? 2 legs to go.
Well, we've seen him do it before. He is the master of Formula One racing. There is no doubt. Actually moving up and challenging Miles. Now, Bevan is just having a storming swim, as is Shane Reed, but as expected. But Bevan is the man who has surprised. Said he was in terrible form going into this race, but look what's happening now. Second place as we are about to hit transition.
And it's not the kind of race that we expect Brad Bevan to structure, because he's normally much more in control. If he's beaten, well, fine. He's usually beaten from someone coming from behind. It's not often that you see him fighting his way through the pack. Mark Fuel.
Coming out of the water, Courtney Atkinson first. Brad the Croc Bevan. What a swim by him second. Miles Stewart third. Chris McCormick. Shane Reed, Matt Reed, Chris Hill. A great swim by the Professor. He's hanging in there. Bryce Quirk, the local boy. Go Bryce, he's doing it. Levi Maxwell and Paul Amy, a good swim by him as well.
Amy, a very strong runner. If he positions himself well on the bike, he could be a factor here as well. But Atkinson, the man to chase. Bevan, the one doing the chasing, ahead of Stewart drags.
What a performance from Brad. He has worked very, very hard to get up where he is at the moment. I hope it hasn't taken too much out of him. Courtney Atkinson looks extremely comfortable to me out in front. On the bike now, on side saddle, jumps on, feet on top, get up speed, and then put your feet in the shoes. Brad Bevan off in second. Miles Stewart's there. Chris McCormick there. Shane Reed there. They've got a little break. Matt Reed was next, and then you had Chris Hill, who had such a great swim.
This and the run to go, and it looks as though Atkinson will not try and commit to a break, but settle down with this chasing group, and it may well come down to a sprint finish, in which case, well, we'll see who's in the group. Courtney has been able to win sprint finishes before, but there are some high caliber runners behind him.
And look at Chris McCormick already going past Courtney. Courtney just sat up, actually, taking a drink now. McCormick going to the front. He's the strong man. He's been driving the train all throughout this race, and he's off the front again. He will bury himself on this bike, I'll bet you. He would rather be off the front in the lead 5 and bury himself so that the others can't catch. Chris Hill needs to get up there with Shane Reed if he's any chance today.
Yeah, Matt Reed with him there at the moment. It's been a great fight back from Hilly, there's no doubt about that. Macca's attitude is quite extraordinary. He will not play ducks and drakes out there on the course. He's a very honest competitor, if you could put it that way. He will go off the front if he's feeling good, but other athletes might not do so. They might deliberately hold back, try and put something in reserve, and maybe even psych out their rivals tactically. But it's not something Chris McCormack's inclined to do and never will.
Loves to go hard, loves to go off the front. There he is. Chris Hill needs to get up with Shane Reed. He's actually broken Matt Reed. Hill is the man who needs to get onto this pack. This is where the race can be won and lost. McCormick on the front, still on the front. Nobody taking a turn. Behind him, Miles Stewart tucked in, as he always is. Then Courtney Atkinson. Then you've got Brad Bevan, and behind him, Shane Reed. Hill's the man you can just see with the white and blue helmet about 10 metres back.
Well, is McCormack going to wave them on to take a turn? It'll be interesting to see if he does. It surely couldn't be too much more in this 7K bike leg before he actually calls somebody else to get out in front, and that would benefit him. But I don't think any of these guys are too willing to take a hand.
Look at this, he's waving him through now. He's waving and nothing's happening. Miles has sat up, put the hands up on top of the handlebars, not taking a turn. Courtney coming through, maybe he'll take a turn. McCormick's just too strong, that's the problem. They're expending their energy just to stay with him. Courtney coming up to the front now. You can see how strong that Chris McCormick is because he drops into second place. He'll take another turn shortly, you can bet. Brad Bevan there sitting at the back, resting. Miles Stewart hasn't taken a turn at the front. 20% of the bike course down, and Chris McCormick has led virtually that whole way.
Well, Bevan, as we spoke, moved up into second position there behind Courtney. Shane Reed, the one at the back, taking a little rest. This is a formidable group, though, and they have moved away from Matt Reed and Chris Hill. Paul Amy was back there as well, but they have a huge job to do now. They are spread out. They're not working together. So whatever energy they have to expel to get up there is going to be a big penalty at the end of this race. Now, there's Amy ahead of that group. Matt Reed is next. Chris Hill. Then Quirk and Maxwell there together. And Hideo Fukui of Japan, who is struggling back behind them. But what an extraordinary performance. I wonder if Bevan can go on with this. I wonder if he knows whether he can go on with it or not. It's a bit of a mystery.
Well, if he's off the front, he's got to be feeling okay. Brad leading the charge. Then you've got Courtney Atkinson in behind him, taking a few more turns now. I think Chris McCormick went so hard on that first lap that the other guys couldn't do anything else but just sit on and let him go. And he's had about a half a lap rest, and look now back on the front. In tucks Courtney Atkinson behind him. You can see the pace lifts when McCormick goes to the front. Not really aerodynamic, just strong. The upper body working side to side, the legs powering ahead. Taking the corner here at the Kia Sportage on this Mitcham bike leg. Round he goes. Then you've got Atkinson. Then the Croc standing straight up. Miles Stewart and Shane Reed content to sit on the back virtually the whole way.
Well, we've had a look at the top 10, but just to give you an idea, Greg Bennett, who's been a superb performer throughout the history of this series, is in about 11th place with Trent Chapman, who was 5th in the series in 1998. Gemmell and Watson of New Zealand. Lees is back there. That's a bit of a surprise. Mark Lees normally would be further up in this format. He must have had a setback in one of those legs. Simon Thompson, Hideo Fukui, we saw a lap down a little earlier, and Kelly Guest of Canada has pulled out of the race.
Well, news from out on the course, Bill, is that both Craig Watson and Mark Lees had mishaps. Watson losing a bike shoe in the first transition, and Mark Lees' handlebars coming loose of all things.
Well, that'll do it to you at this level. You just cannot afford. Now, we are back in the field now. Well, there's Watson falling, and he just doesn't need any more drama, does he? We saw Lees, I think, one of the athletes, go past him with Simon Thompson, and Chris Gemmell was there as well. But it's just been a disaster for Craig Watson. We'll be back. Runner-up last year, Courtney Atkinson, and there's highlights from the Australian Sprint Championships. Just a taste of what you can expect in the January edition of Australia's leading triathlon and multi-sport magazine, on sale now.
Are you ready, Tri Kids? 30.
There from Mitcham, who sponsored the bike leg as well, in between the men's and the women's races. Now back on course, and this lead group of 5. Most unusual, even for the second bike leg of an enduro, to see a group this small. And there's no doubt the winner will come from this group.
Well, you've got to say Chris McCormick is probably the reason why this group is away. He is grimacing on the front, has done most of the work. He's been the strong man. Tucked in behind him, of course, Courtney Atkinson, then the Croc, Brad Bevan. Miles Stewart looking very comfortable in 4th, and Shane Reed has sat in 5th spot the whole way. Here's the chase pack now, Bill.
Matt Reed at the back of the man, struggling a little bit, I think. Chris Hill is up there. Paul Amy out at the front. Bryce Quirk and Levi Maxwell. But now we're back with the leading group. Brad Bevan, who said his ambition in 2001 was to avoid cars and stay upright, which is fairly logical given what happened to him in his Olympic lead-up. But another of his ambitions is to fly jet fighters at the age of 32, and hopefully with a nice bank balance, he may be able to achieve that one day. McCormack still can't wave them through. Atkinson taking a lot of time there to get to the front, and gets a pat on the back in thanks from Chris McCormack. Now we're back with that chasing pack, and it's only 4 because Paul Amy has left them and is in between the 2 packs. We have Maxwell, we have Quirk, Matt Reed and Chris Hill in that little group. And this man, Hideo Fukui, we saw him momentarily, is a lap down. Bevan taking his turn in the lead now of this pack. McCormack is still there with Stewart, Atkinson and Snuffy. Reed has not been better placed than 5th out of this group for a long way now. I think he needs the rest.
Well, he's perfectly positioned. He's not as strong a runner as the other guys, and he's in a good spot there. He'll rest and then hammer on the run. Bevan, McCormick on the front yet again. Bevan grimacing behind him. Miles Stewart behind him. Courtney Atkinson and Snuffy Reid, but it's Mccormick who's been doing all the work, and guess what? He's on the front again.
Atkinson with a Bachelor of Commerce degree. I wonder how much he's learned in his time in the F1 series from having such great athletes around him. An athlete who in recent times has made it clear he only wants to train on his own, although I understand that he's recently hooked up with Cole Stewart's group on the Gold Coast, so he has become a partner of Miles, and that in itself is going to be a fairly daunting prospect. But if you're going to be the best, you have to train with the best, I guess.
Well, you've certainly got to race against the best, Bill, but sometimes athletes prefer to train on their own. What can happen when you get in a big group of a lot of good athletes, a training session can end up in a race, and it's not good for your training. So some guys need the motivation of a group, others don't. There's Greg Bennett in about 11th place. Behind him, Trent Chapman. Then you've got Mark Spider-Lees and Chris Gemmell, 11th, 12th, 13th and 14th on the bike.
They're really split up here, a group that is a long way back, but this is where the race decision will be made, and Shane Reid still at the back of them. Chris McCormack taking his turn in front of the pack now. Bevan tucked in behind him. Atkinson and Stewart are the other two in that group. They're a long way ahead of the rest, and given it's only a 2-kilometre run, it would take some sort of miracle for any of the other athletes to catch up now. The winner will come from here, the guys we're seeing right now.
Indeed, as Bevan takes a turn on the front. Been prominent the last lap or so, Brad. He has taken a few turns at the front. I haven't seen Reid or, in fact, Miles Stewart take many turns at all the last couple of laps. Well, Reid hasn't taken a turn the whole time. But Brad Bevan on the front. Chris McCormick chasing. Miles Stewart in third wheel. Then you've got Courtney Atkinson, and behind him, Shane Snuffy Reid.
Only 7 men have won a round of Formula One, even though plenty more have won actual races within a round. There are more than one race in several of the rounds during a series. But incidentally, 3 of these guys have not won a round, and that is Atkinson, McCormack and Shane Reid. So if either of those or any of those 3 can get up here today, they'll be making a little history.
Indeed they will, as Paul Amy, the man on his own in 6th place at the moment, tries hard but in vain to chase down our leaders. Bevan now still on the front, heading towards transition, doing a great job behind him. The pace is picked up because they've strung out, Bill. You can see the elastic band effect there. Bevan must have put in a little surge, but Miles Stewart closing down the gap.
A couple of masters at the transition here, right in the lead in this race, and side by side. Bevan doesn't want that. He wants to get a clean transition. If you're running in there together, there's a chance of locking wheels or locking legs on the way out. So drags, this is a very important part of the race. The platform that they give themselves for the run could decide it.
Indeed. How many times have we seen this over the past 4 or 5 seasons? Bevan racking the bike, off with the helmet, on with the left and on with the right will go. But Miles Stewart, look at him. What a great transition from Miles. Rounds the official. They've gone the right way this time. Brad Bevan next, then Courtney. Then you've got Chris McCormick and Shane Reid within 2 seconds of each other.
Well, the 2 masters in and first out on the course. That's significant, but Atkinson not far behind them. What will Bevan and perhaps indeed Atkinson choose to do here with Stewart leading the race? He's the master of the final sprint. They don't want a situation where he's sitting behind them and having the last say in this event. Will someone put on a surge now? And if they do, it'll have to be soon because it's only 2 kilometres to the end.
Brad Bevan working very hard on the front. The eyes almost closed, breathing very heavy. Miles Stewart also working. Courtney looks quite comfortable in third. Shane Reid and Chris McCormick dropping back. We saw the chase group entering transition. Bevan working hard on front. These guys know they must break Miles Stewart. Bill Miles will cover every move. Courtney now going to the front and definitely putting on a surge.
3 of these front 5 were also 3 of the top 5 at the finish of the 2000 season. Of course, that statistic is a little bit misleading because Bevan was injured and unable to compete the full series last year. Shane Reid struggling now as we see Atkinson really applying the pressure. Bevan and Stewart look the most capable of going with him, and McCormack, a little surprising I think, although he has done a lot of hard work, drags up to this point.
Just buried himself on the bike. Not particularly smart racing, but he is going to finish in the top 5. This is smart racing though. Courtney Atkinson has gone off the front. He knows perhaps his only chance to beat Miles Stewart is to break him early in the run, because Miles has that devastating kick that we've seen over and over and over again.
Well, Atkinson's made no apologies or pretensions about his form going into this race, but Stewart and Bevan were a little cagey. Let's see just how much petrol they have. They look like they're catching him.
Stewart surging up. He's just overtaken Bevan, surging up. Look, within 20 metres, surging right up onto Courtney Atkinson's heels. Stay with us.
The finish now, round one of the Kia Formula One Series for 2001. Atkinson under pressure from Miles Stewart, about 2.5 laps to go.
1,250 metres, Bill, and Atkinson needs to drop Stewart fairly soon if he's any chance to take out his first ever Formula One round, because Stewart has the devastating kick. They've dropped Bevan. He's back in third. With Bevan is a lap runner, Simon Thompson from Canberra. Behind him, Shane Reed. He's in fourth. But here's the action now. 1 and 2 side by side, striding out to the finish.
Atkinson, as they go through the Powerade Thirst Station. Won Ishigaki ITU World Cup round last year. Joined the Australian elite team for the first time out of the juniors. Of course, a world junior champion the year before. Second in the F1 series. He was fourth in 1998. His first year, 8th in 1997. He's steadily improved. Has he improved enough to out-sprint, or at least outsmart, Miles Stewart in this finish? A man who has been around for a long, long time and has won many of these sort of contests.
Well, you look at the two athletes and you'd swear that Atkinson is in the better shape. He looks more comfortable. His form's quite good, but Miles will hang there. He'll stick like glue to Atkinson and then try and outsprint him. Miles really hurting. It's not often we see Miles with that expression on his face. Atkinson needs to go, and he needs to go now, Bill.
He's an incredible competitor, though, Miles. He was an Australian schools rugby league representative, a national swimming champion, and a national track cycling champion. He's not just a great triathlete, he's a great all-round athlete. And one of the attributes that he carries with him into those contests is his mental ability. And that has carried him a long way in contests like this.
Well, the one thing we notice with Miles is that he rarely, if ever, makes mistakes, particularly tactical mistakes. If he's beaten on the day, he's beaten by a better athlete, but he doesn't normally beat himself. And that is the key. He'll stay there. He knows he's got a stronger finish than Courtney does. Courtney knows that as well, and he's trying all he can. At the moment, he cannot break Miles Stewart, and he needs to do it fairly soon. Bevan dropping back further in third place. His only danger is Shane Reed. Chris McCormick dropping back to fifth, and he's a ways back, in danger perhaps of being caught.
Miles was third in this series back in 1996. He competed partially in the F1 series in 95, but in his first full season, third behind Bevan and Welch. The following season, second to Bevan again in 98, third to Bevan in 99, where Jan Rahula of the Czech Republic surprisingly finished second, and of course the big breakthrough last season. And he is still just behind Courtney Atkinson, and it's hard to tell, but as you say, Atkinson still looks pretty comfortable out there, and since they've been training together, I wonder if Atkinson can perhaps pull something out of the psyche to get round Miles Stewart.
Well, he's only got 500 metres to do it, Bill. He can't leave it to the last 250. It's 250 up and then 250 back to the finish. There's the finishing arch in the background. That'll be a welcome sight for all the athletes. But right now, the battle is between Courtney Atkinson and Miles Stewart. Miles will be content to stay there. He will wait to the last 150 metres and go. Atkinson just must try whatever he can right now.
Well, we saw in the Olympic Games the silver medalist McKeely Jones sitting right where Miles is now, behind Bridget McMahon, and it looked for all the world like McKeely would have the sit and sprint to beat her. That wasn't the case. Now we're looking at some lap runners here. Lees, Watson and Gemmell. They're in front of our race leaders, Atkinson and Stewart. And I wonder if Courtney can escape the shadow of this amazing athlete with a 14-year career in triathlon.
Looks over the right shoulder, looks over the left. There he is. Miles was hiding. You can bet he'll go soon. The lap guys are going to be overtaken.
And
here he goes. Stewart on the inside now. Courtney, can he go with him? He's going to have to stick and go hard from a long way out. Miles now puts on the afterburners. Away he goes. Courtney trying to stay, but there's no matching this man. Look at the sprint finish on the powerful Miles Stewart. He's away, Bill. He's going to take round one of the Kia Formula One.
Hard to believe, isn't it, that after such a great performance, Atkinson has been blitzed here in the final few metres. Miles Stewart picking up where he left off last year. Victory in the first round from Atkinson, but what a performance from the youngster. He knows now the benchmark that has been set. Coming in third, will it be Bevan hanging on to his position? Yes, it is. Excellent performance. Shane Reed stayed with him. That was a good effort. Bevan is hurting because he has not had the preparation he would have liked. Chris McCormack making up the top five here in an absorbing race.